The invitation to Bradley Preparatory Academy's emergency fundraising gala sat on my desk, its gold embossing catching the afternoon light of my penthouse office. 30 floors above Manhattan, I ran my fingers over the familiar crest, the same one I'd worn on my blazer for 12 years as a student, back when my parents were on the board instead of desperately trying to save the school from bankruptcy. Miss Sullivan? My assistant Sarah appeared in the doorway. Your mother's called 3 times today about the gala. Should I keep screening her calls? I smiled, thinking of the irony. 3 years ago, my mother had blocked my number after I chose to become a public school teacher instead of taking over the family's investment firm. Now she was desperately trying to reach me, or rather trying to reach Katherine Chen, the mysterious billionaire tech founder they hoped would save their precious academy. They had no idea that Katherine Chen was actually their disappointment of a daughter, Kate Sullivan. Let her leave messages, I said, picking up the invitation. I want to hear how she phrases her desperation. The truth was, I'd been expecting this moment for years. Ever since that final dinner where they'd cut me off completely. Teachers are nobodies, my mother had declared, her voice sharp with disgust. No daughter of mine is going to waste her life teaching in some public school. My father hadn't even looked up from his phone. If you do this, you're on your own. No trust fund, no connections, nothing. They thought they were punishing me. Instead, they gave me the freedom to build something extraordinary. While they thought I was just teaching, I was actually developing an educational technology platform that would revolutionize how students learn. Every frustration I encountered in the classroom became an opportunity for innovation. Every challenge became a solution waiting to be coded. EDU Tech Solutions launched quietly 2 years ago. Within months, it was being called the future of education. Venture capital firms fought for the chance to invest. Tech giants offered billions to buy us out. But I kept my identity hidden, using my Chinese grandmother's maiden name, Chen, and avoiding public appearances. Let everyone picture Katherine Chen as some Silicon Valley wunderkind. The truth was much more satisfying. Your mother's latest message, Sarah read from her tablet. Please, Ms. Chen, Bradley Prep represents everything excellent in education. We desperately need your support to maintain our standards. I laughed softly. Standards. Like the ones that had driven me to teach in public schools in the first place. Did you know, I told Sarah, that Bradley Prep spends more on their annual gala than most public schools spend on their entire arts program? But they can't pay their teachers a living wage. My phone buzzed, a text from my younger brother James. Mom's losing it over this gala. You should see her practicing her pitch to the mysterious Ms. Chen. Still can't believe you're actually teaching in some public school. When are you going to grow up? Poor James. Always following our parents' script perfectly. He had no idea that his failure sister was now worth more than our entire family combined. I walked to the window, looking out at the city sprawling below. Somewhere out there, my old classroom at PS 127 was filling with students. I'd kept teaching even after EDU Tech took off, though now I did it anonymously as a substitute. Those kids taught me more about real education than 15 years at Bradley Prep ever had. Miss Sullivan? Sarah appeared again. The Bradley Prep board meeting minutes just came in. You'll want to see this. I took the tablet, scanning the confidential documents. Our sources inside Bradley had been feeding us information for months, painting a picture of spectacular mismanagement. The school had been operating on borrowed money and inflated prestige for years. Look at these salary figures, I pointed out to Sarah. The headmaster makes 7 figures, but they're cutting the teaching staff's health benefits. Classic Bradley. My phone buzzed again, this time with a forwarded email from one of my former colleagues at PS 127. Bradley Prep had just poached their best science teacher with promises of better pay, only to rescind the offer when their latest budget crisis hit. They're still playing the same games, I muttered, remembering how they'd treated their staff when I was a student. All prestige, no substance. The gala was in 3 days. Bradley's board, led by my parents, would be expecting Katherine Chen to swoop in and save their precious institution. They'd prepared speeches about excellence in education, about maintaining standards, about the importance of tradition. What they didn't know was that I'd been quietly buying up their debt through various shell companies. Every loan they'd taken out to cover their extravagant expenses, every mortgage they'd refinanced to build unnecessary additions, it all belonged to me now. Sarah, I called out. Get me everything we have on Bradley's teaching staff, current and former. Especially anyone who left in the last 5 years. Already done, she replied, handing me another tablet. The pattern is pretty clear. They hire young teachers, work them to exhaustion, then replace them when they ask for raises. I nodded, remembering Miss Patterson, my favorite English teacher. She'd opened my eyes to the power of education, showed me that teaching was about more than test scores and college acceptances. The board had forced her out for suggesting they reduce the headmaster's salary to fund teacher pensions. What's your plan for the gala? Sarah asked, knowing me well enough to see the wheels turning. I picked up the invitation again, running my finger over the embossed crest. I think it's time for Katherine Chen to make her first public appearance. And for Bradley Prep to learn what real education looks like. My phone buzzed one more time, another message from my mother. Miss Chen, I know you value excellence in education. Bradley Prep has been shaping young minds for generations. We just need a small investment, say $50 million, to continue our important work. I set the phone down, smiling. $50 million. That's what they thought they needed to save their sinking ship. They had no idea that their salvation or destruction rested in the hands of the daughter they dismissed as just a teacher. The same daughter who now controlled not just their debt, but the future of education technology itself. Send an RSVP to the gala, I told Sarah. Katherine Chen will be happy to discuss Bradley Prep's future. And Sarah? Make sure they seat me at my parents' table. As I returned to the window, I thought about all the teachers who'd been discarded by institutions like Bradley. All the students who'd been taught that prestige matters more than purpose. All the parents like mine who measured success in dollars rather than impact. In 3 days, they would learn that sometimes the nobody they ignored becomes exactly somebody they need. And that sometimes, the best lesson is taught by the teacher they refuse to value. The night of the gala, Bradley Preparatory Academy's grand ballroom glittered with desperate optimism. Crystal chandeliers cast elegant shadows over Manhattan's elite as they sipped champagne and pretended their children's prestigious education wasn't on the verge of collapse. I adjusted my Chanel dress, worth more than a teacher's yearly salary at Bradley, and watched my mother work the room. She was in her element, air-kissing donors and dropping hints about the mysterious Katherine Chen's imminent arrival. Miss Chen. A young server approached with a glass of champagne. Mrs. Sullivan asked that we serve you our finest vintage. I smiled, taking the glass. My mother had no idea she'd just sent champagne to her disowned daughter. Thank you. And please send my compliments to Mrs. Sullivan. Across the room, I spotted my father deep in conversation with Headmaster Princeton, their faces tight with worry despite their forced smiles. The headmaster's new Rolex caught the light, probably purchased with funds that should have gone to teacher salaries. Katherine. My mother's voice carried across the ballroom as she hurried over. Miss Chen, we're so honored you could join us. The woman who had blocked my number, who had told me teachers were nobodies, who had cut me off without a second thought, now stood before me practically vibrating with anticipation. She didn't recognize me. 3 years and some subtle changes in appearance had seen to that. Mrs. Sullivan, I replied smoothly. Lovely event. Though I can't help but notice there don't seem to be many teachers here. Her smile flickered. Oh well, ticket prices, you understand. But please, let me introduce you to the board. As she led me toward the cluster of Bradley's power players, I caught sight of James entering the ballroom. My brother's latest Instagram post had mocked public school teachers for complaining about their salaries. Try getting a real job, he'd written. Katherine Chen, my father announced as we approached, extending his hand. Your reputation precedes you. We've all been following EduTech's remarkable success. Have you? I asked innocently. Including its work with public schools? Headmaster Princeton jumped in quickly. While public education has its place, surely you understand that institutions like Bradley represent the pinnacle of academic excellence. I sipped my champagne, remembering how he had rejected a teacher's request for basic classroom supplies while approving funds for a new faculty lounge. Tell me, headmaster, what's the starting salary for your teachers? The question caught him off guard. Well, we offer a competitive package. $35,000, I cut in. While you make $500,000 plus bonuses. Interesting definition of excellence. My mother's carefully applied makeup couldn't hide her frown. Miss Chen, shall we discuss the investment opportunity? We've prepared a detailed presentation. Actually, I set down my glass. I have a presentation of my own. I nodded to Sarah, who stood ready by the audiovisual controls. The ballroom screens flickered to life, displaying Bradley's financial records, employment histories and board meeting minutes. Over the past decade, I began, my voice carrying across the now silent room, Bradley Prep has systematically undervalued its teachers while maintaining excessive administrative salaries. You've cut classroom budgets while spending millions on cosmetic improvements. You've driven away dedicated educators while protecting your own privileges. These are confidential records, my father sputtered. How did you dash? The same way I acquired your debt, I continued calmly. All of it. Every loan, every mortgage, every line of credit. Bradley Prep doesn't just need a donor. It needs a complete restructuring. Headmaster Princeton stepped forward, his face red. Now see here, Ms. Chen dash. No, I cut him off. You see here. I nodded to Sarah again, and the screens changed to show profiles of former Bradley teachers. These educators left because you valued prestige over teaching. Because you cared more about your country club memberships than their health care. My mother grabbed my arm. Please, we can discuss this privately dash. Like how you privately told your daughter that teachers are nobodies? I turned to face her fully, watching recognition slowly dawn in her eyes. That teaching in a public school was beneath the Sullivan name? The champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the marble floor. Kate. James pushed through the crowd, staring at me in disbelief. Holy shit. Surprise, I smiled. The nobody teacher your daughter became is now the billionaire you're begging to save your school. The ballroom erupted in whispers. Board members who had nodded along when my parents disowned me now stood frozen, champagne forgotten in their hands. This is impossible, my father managed. You're just a teacher. I'm the founder and CEO of EDU Tech Solutions, I corrected him. The company revolutionizing education technology worldwide. And yes, Dad, I'm also just a teacher. Because unlike you, I understand that teaching isn't beneath anyone, it's above almost everything. Headmaster Princeton tried to salvage the situation. Kate, Ms. Sullivan, surely we can discuss this reasonably. The school's reputation is about to change dramatically, I finished for him. Starting with the leadership. I pulled out my tablet, displaying the terms I'd prepared. EDU Tech will acquire Bradley Prep, but with conditions. First, the entire board resigns. Second, administrative salaries will be capped at 4 times the average teacher salary. Third, at least 60% of the budget will go directly to classroom resources and teacher compensation. You can't do this, my father protested weakly. Actually, I can. I own your debt, remember? Either accept these terms or I'll call in the loans tomorrow. Bradley will close its doors before the next semester. My mother sank into a chair, her social status crumbling before her eyes. Why do this to us? I'm not doing this to you, I replied. I'm doing this for every teacher you've looked down on. Every educator you've undervalued. Every person you told wasn't good enough because they chose purpose over prestige. I turned to address the stunned crowd. Bradley Prep will become what it should have been all along. A school that values education over reputation. That values teachers as the professionals they are. James stepped forward, his usual arrogance replaced by calculation. Just come on. We can work something out. Keep it in the family . Family. I laughed. You mean the people who blocked my number because I wanted to teach? Who mocked my career choice on social media? That family. I nodded to Sarah, who began distributing documents to the board members. You have until midnight to accept the terms. After that, I call in the loans. And if we refuse? Headmaster Princeton asked, though his voice lacked conviction. Then Bradley closes and I use the buildings to open a teacher training center. Either way, education wins. My mother stood up, tears threatening her perfect makeup. Kate, please. This school is our legacy. No, Mom. This school was your status symbol. But now it's going to be what it always should have been, a place of real learning. As I turned to leave, my father called out. You'd really destroy your own family's reputation? I stopped at the doorway, thinking of all the brilliant teachers I'd worked with in public schools. The dedicated educators who changed lives every day without recognition or reward. You taught me an important lesson when you cut me off, I said. You taught me that real value isn't in a family name or a school's reputation. It's in the impact we have on others. I'm just sorry you had to learn it from just a teacher. The next morning, every major news outlet carried the story. Disowned teacher-turned-tech billionaire acquires elite prep school, revolutionizes education model. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from family members who had suddenly remembered my existence. James sent a dozen texts alternating between apologies and business proposals. My mother left tearful voicemails about family loyalty. I ignored them all, focusing instead on the emails from Bradley's teachers. Their hope and excitement about the changes ahead meant more than any family reconciliation. 1 week later, I stood in my old classroom at PS 127, looking out at the eager faces of my students. They didn't know their substitute teacher was a billionaire, or that I'd just revolutionized one of the city's most prestigious schools. Today's lesson, I announced, is about value. About how success isn't measured by what people think of you, but by what you can do for others. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong, it's proving yourself right. And sometimes the greatest lessons are taught by those everyone else underestimated. Just ask any teacher. We know all about turning nobody into somebody.